The numbers are just simply beyond clear. The summer coronavirus surge is taking an enormous political toll on the president. Take a look at this new CNN poll of polls. It averages out the 5 most recent national 2020 polls. When you average them out, 52% of registered voters support the Democrat, Joe Biden. Only 40% back the Republican incumbent, President Trump. And in the latest Washington Post ABC News poll, 60% of registered voters, 6 in 10, disapprove of how President Trump is handling this pandemic. Here to share their expertise and their insights, CNN political commentator and Republican strategist Alice Stewart and Gary Langer, the president of Langer Research Associates. He is also the polling director for ABC News. It's nice to see both of you. Alice, I want to start with you. You've done a lot of campaigns, and they come to you and they say, here are some weaknesses. And so then you say, okay, what are our strengths? So we can focus on our strengths while we deal with the resources. Let's look at Trump versus Biden in Gary's Washington Post ABC News poll. Overall, Biden plus 15. Race relations, Biden plus 23. The coronavirus, Biden plus 20. Crime and safety, Biden plus 7. On the economy, even. The president of the United States is in a deep ditch, Alice.
Yeah, those numbers are certainly concerning, John. And if the election were held tomorrow, I would be really concerned, but it's not. And you also look at a recent poll that came out over the weekend, and the top priorities for this election are coronavirus, the economy, and race relations. If I were advising this campaign, I would say focus on those issues. And I think he has a couple things in his favor. Donald Trump, he has time, and he has a track record. Donald Trump has been behind in the polls in the past leading up to elections. He was in 2016, and he has the time, and he certainly has the resources to get things done. But he really needs to step up his efforts on combating coronavirus, really reinforce the American people that he is working with regard to finding a vaccine and encouraging people to wear masks, and really focusing on the priority for Americans, which is coronavirus. And that will go a long way to changing those numbers in his direction.
Well, and to that point, though, Gary, in your polling, 6 in 10 Americans disapprove of how the president is handling this pandemic. To Alice's point, this is from the Fox poll we just showed, not your polling, but I think your numbers are pretty consistent. The top issues in the country, COVID-19, the economy, and race relations. The president's underwater when it comes to the pandemic, underwater significantly on race relations, perhaps breaking even on the economy. How do you turn something like that around when in your polling, the number that jumped out at me is 64%, so just shy of 2/3 of Americans do not trust most or anything the president says when he's talking about the virus.
Yeah, that's a challenge for the president, of course, and it's a hard subject to change right now. An important point here are the trend lines, not only where the president stands, but where these lines have been going. He's gone in approval on handling the coronavirus from 51% in late March to 38%, now down 13 points. Disapproval up 15 points in 3.5 months. And note, too, that the president's approval rating on handling the situation has dropped most steeply in rural areas, which have been his heartland, down 23 points in this period. He's in May, he had 90% approval among Republicans for handling the virus. Today, it's 79%. So, as you pointed out, where does this take us? In March, the president and Joe Biden were essentially even in trust to handle the situation. Now it's Biden plus 20 points on trust. What the president does have going for him, I would add to what Alice mentioned, is enthusiasm. Among his own supporters, nearly 7 in 10 are very enthusiastic about backing him. Biden falls badly on that measure, 39% enthusiastic. Biden supporters are more enthusiastic about defeating Donald Trump than they are about supporting Joe Biden.
And Alice, one of the, I'm going to call it a conundrum and try to choose a polite word for Republicans right now, is you see the rising case count. State after state after state is saying we have to work on an absentee ballot, more aggressive mail-in ballot plan, because a lot of people are going to think it's not safe to vote come November unless there is some miracle turnaround in the coronavirus. But here's the President of the United States yesterday, even though Republicans have been urging him in recent weeks to stop, here he is in that interview with Chris Wallace, dumping on mail-in voting.
Mail-in voting is going to rig the election. I really do.
Are you suggesting that you might not accept the results of the election?
I have to see.
Can you give a direct answer? You will accept the election?
I have to see.
The last part, will you accept the results of the election? We'll have to see. But on the mail-in voting part, a lot of Republicans are nervous. The president is telling Republican voters don't trust mail-in voting when mail-in voting is going to be critical not only in the presidential race, but in all the congressional races and all the state races.
John, one thing that's perfectly clear is that each state handles their own elections. It's a state-by-state race. And what we can do more than anything is assure all Americans that we have free and fair elections. I have concerns about mail-in voting. There is certainly a lot of room for error and fraud. But we're in a new time, we're in a new era, and with coronavirus and the concerns about people coming out to public places, specifically older people and more people that are vulnerable with regard to their health, we need to take another look at it. But we do need to make sure that it's done in a fair way where the results are accurate. But I don't think we should count anything out with regard to the election at this point, but make sure that we work with all the secretaries of state across this country and make sure that the elections are carried out in a way that are fair, not just to Republicans, but Democrats as well, because this is a turning point election. Of course, we say this every 4 years, don't we, John? This is a critical election, but this really is, because we have a pandemic and we have such a heightened awareness on race relations in this country. And I think more than anything, we're going to have a lot of enthusiasm, whether people are getting out to vote for Trump, for Biden, or for a change. It's important for people to know they have that opportunity.
And Gary, I want to close with this. Normally I wouldn't talk about how you do your work on TV, but the Trump campaign attacking all of the polls, not just your polls, saying that all these public polls grossly undersample Republicans. And that's why Joe Biden has this big lead, because you are deliberately, they would seem to suggest, not calling enough Republicans. Could you address that straight up so that people understand? Polls aren't perfect, but these are good polls.
Yeah, we do a random sample of Americans around the country. 75% of our interviews are by cell phone. We're down the middle on methodology with full disclosure of all our methodological elements up on abcnews.com. You're welcome to vet it. We release our full data sets, our full questionnaires. We play it right down the middle on these data. What the real point is here, just to go back to the substance of this, if I may, is the President of the United States has an overall job approval rating, probably more important than vote preference at this moment, of 39%. That's dropped 9 points in the last few months. 57% disapprove of his work in office overall. It's very near his career high disapproval. That's where he's got to be focused, I would suggest, and try to turn that number around.
And we'll see if he can do that. He's in a meeting with reporters today saying he may bring back those coronavirus briefings. We shall see. Gary Lang or Ellis Stewart, both of you, appreciate your expertise and insights. We'll continue that conversation.